Hi, this is Matt with the Intergalactic Herald. Welcome to my Star Atlas Week in Review podcast. This is podcast number 113. Any articles or videos mentioned can be found on my website at intergalacticherald.com. Just look for news recap number 161. So just a quick summary of things we'll be talking about. Some things I found in the latest AFIA newsletter. There was another Atlas Brew. And then there were a few content creators that put out some videos, or a video, and then a couple articles actually got put out there. But before I get to that, just a couple quick things about things I'm doing in Star Atlas. First, I do have a Star Atlas PIP, Polis Improvement Pros. I don't know. Anyways, it's a proposal to create an in-person community mate platform and get a funding grant from the Star Atlas DAO. So that is in the draft phase. So appreciate anybody who wants to read that and give any feedback. You can go to the Star Atlas Discord, look for the DAO section, look for draft pips, and you'll find my name plus in-person community meetup platform. Also, I have two Star Atlas projects I'm working on. First is my Star Atlas merch store called Intergalactic Gear, found at intergalacticgear.com. Open for business, not a lot of products yet. Never have enough time to add more, but I have a few mugs and some wall art, and it's again one of those slow burn type of things, but again, been working on some other stuff within Star Atlas. But I do have a merch survey there, so I'd love to get any feedback if you're willing to give it. Again, that's intergalacticgear.com. And then the other one, really on the slow burner, is a Star Atlas community for Star Atlas gamers who are not interested in joining guilds. Not that there's anything wrong with a guild, but, just may not be your thing. Kind of like it's not my thing. So thought it might be kind of cool to have a smaller kind of community around just gaming and talking about different things related. A little more about conversations than the Star Atlas Discord, which is more about lifetime or real-time chat. Use a different platform so that you can sign up for email alerts when people post, so you can kind of come and not have to check every day, but you can still know if something's new that you might want to communicate. I do have an interest survey. If you go to intergalacticcoalition.com, you can fill out that interest survey. Once I get enough interest, obviously, it will move forward. So those are the things I'm working on within the Star Atlas community. So as far as content this past week, some of the same consistent people, like AFIA's newsletter came out, the Atlas Brew occurred, but there were a few new articles and a video I'll mention. But first, let's go ahead and start with the AFIA newsletter. This one actually kind of was doing some summaries from the interview that Michael Wagner gave to one of the community members, and was bringing out a few things that, even though I listened to that 2+ hour interview, kind of didn't either register or just skipped over it or just didn't realize. But couple of things that were pulled out. One was, again, on the upcoming Sage, I don't know what we'll call it, code name for the next release called C4, because there'll be 4 C-related terms, and one of those is combat. And so there was a little more information about how that'll work. And again, I kind of heard this thing with battle lines, but it was a little more information. So what I guess these battle lines are going to be are kind of territorial boundaries that are basically formed by linked star bases that are part of a faction. So what I'm not sure is they sound like you can actually destroy the boundaries, but I'm not sure if you're destroying the boundaries or you're destroying the star bases that are connecting and making the boundaries. But again, it's early, but it was more of like, there was this idea that in order for an enemy to move in to their territory, you'd have to kind of take away these battle lines first. So anyway, so that kind of made a little more sense. The other thing that I didn't remember hearing in the interview was that the map is going to change and going from, and again, I'm not sure I understand this, but from the sector-based map, which I guess means the squares we have now, to a global coordinate system. And again, I'm not sure if that then makes it like unlimited. I mean, since you think of the universe as being, infinite. So again, it'll be interesting to see that. Small comment, hopefully, again, that doesn't change the map in the sense of the game ID. Again, this was a whole problem we had before where they had to change the game ID within Solana, and so then we had to move everything out. So hopefully that doesn't occur. And then the other thing that was brought up was there'll be 2 releases of the UE5 version of the game before Season 0. Cool. I still, to this day, don't understand the releases and the seasons and the pre-seasons and the versions and stuff. And I know there's a roadmap, but so there's 2 releases. So again, it's really hard to follow all that stuff because it's changed so many times over the years. But it sounds like, again, Season 0, which is a major milestone, still needs a couple things before it. So Anyway, so that was great. Again, it's a good summary, so definitely check that out. If you go to my website, Intergalactic Herald, look for intergalacticherald.com, look for news recap number 161. You'll find a direct link to that newsletter. The Atlas Brew occurred this past week from the community team. They pretty much spent the whole one kind of going over some of the roadmap updates and, things that are coming up. So this is great. I'm not trying to dismiss that. I just have not found the roadmap particularly interesting and only in the sense of you need it. It's a project plan. It's a goal. It's all that. But we've had many different roadmaps, and I think there was even a Notion website back in the day. So, but one thing the community team did talk about, and I thought it was kind of interesting, that is on the roadmap that, again, was like, oh, that's cool detail, was that there is this desire that the UE5 version of the game and the Sage version of the game, even though, again, I thought Sage is moving toward being in the UE5 game, but we'll just talk about it as far as gameplay, that something you do in UE5 can have an impact on Sage and the economy, but it can only be earned or found in the UE5 version. So in that sense, there'll be potential for, I guess we'll call it crossover, but more like, hey, we need this thing, but it can only be done if you race in the game, but that thing you earn has purpose in the economy. So I do think actually that's a really clever way of kind of linking the two together so they're not sort of just separate. So something you do with the gunplay can only be done by the gunplay, but yet it is needed in the Sage system. So again, it gives a purpose, way for those things to be sold and traded and stuff like that on the marketplace. So yeah, that's, I think, a really great thing, and they highlighted that. So that was good. Anyway, so those are kind of the traditional things that occur each week. But this week, there was actually a few new things that popped up that I wanted to highlight that I thought were really cool. One was Falcor, who's been a community member. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but definitely would say more into the photography. He does a lot of the photos and videos to highlight things within the showroom. He and another community member, the Empress, did a video about real estate. And at first, I wasn't sure what I was going to watch, but yeah, there is real estate in Star Atlas. So again, it was a great little video, and I'll kind of talk more about that when I get to the next section. But anyways, the link to that is there. Also, I don't know if you call it a magazine, a website. Anyways, a website called Play to Earn had an article. I'm not really familiar with it, but I did sign up for their newsletter, so learn more. But yeah, I think it's playtoearn.com or something like that. Anyways, had an article about that there were $700,000 in monthly revenue in Star Atlas. And of course, great title, maybe want to read it. So I did read it. But again, I'll pause and comment on that in a second. So, and then finally, I think it's a Star Atlas Guild, Star Horizon, actually did a Medium article where they did another summary of the recent Michael Wagner interview. And so there was so much content in that interview. So again, if you want to go to the source, obviously go watch the video. It would have been 2 news recaps back. But now both AFIA has done kind of a summary, and now Star Horizon's done a summary. So there's definitely a lot there, and it's really great that different community groups or members have stepped up and done that. So anyway, so that was kind of a recap of content that came out this past week, and I'll move to the next 2 segments, which again, my kind of thoughts on the state of Star Atlas, and then kind of my journey playing. So the first one, going back to the C4, again, the battle lines, the combat, I think a lot more in that interview was mentioned about claim stakes, which got me really excited. And I think, again, it's council rank and crafting, I think. Anyways, those all sound cool. But I'm kind of wondering, and maybe this goes back to kind of my lack of excitement about roadmap updates, is 4 things. And each one of those, like claim stakes, the complexity they were describing as kind of being mini factories was like, well, just release that. That'd be cool. So I am kind of wondering why these 4 things have to go together. And again, maybe we just don't know yet. Like maybe council rank is what allows for combat. So that would make sense. Claim stakes, of course, we already have. I'm not sure how that relates to combat. But I just hope we're not combining too many things, and thus that we don't see the light of it. Because, again, seems like they can be independent. So, but again, it's still early. They've been talking about it, mentioning things. So sounds like it's definitely under development. So hopefully, again, we're just not combining too many things. Next one was a real estate. So and again, I'm not sure if I got the right terms, but there's the ability that they were called HABs. But anyways, that each of the central space stations has buildings. Again, I'm trying to remember. I forget what they're called when you buy them on the marketplace. But anyways, that they exist, and there's different tiers. And they had different sizes. Well, what was really fascinating with the video that Falkor and the Empress did, I had never kind of connected the dots, which was that the things we could buy and I think it's the Oni Fraction Central Space Station, they exist. So I remember a couple of the level designers, I think, were really working on that Central Space Station, and it's playable. I mean, you can walk around and take a look at it. Beyond the Horizon did some videos running around looking at stuff. But I guess I never made the connection that the things that are there are actually the real estate, the HABs, the buildings, the tier 1 through 5s. And when the video showed those, because they too zoomed around but kind of took photos type of thing in the video, I never had made the connection that that's that. And I have to admit, I really got like, wow, it really, really cool to say, hey, that's my land, or that's my house or plot or HAB, whatever terms we're going to use. But just there it is, and you could own that. Unfortunately, the price were high, again, because they're not really for sale. I think they released some of them a few years ago, and so some people bought them or something. But anyways, it was just really cool to see that the fact that each one of the tiers, here's a physical place. And again, maybe this had been stated before. I just didn't kind of put two and two together. So really appreciate that they're putting some videos out and kind of taking a different slant on some parts of Star Atlas that, again, myself just hadn't really put together. And that's really cool. So, and then the last thing on kind of the thoughts on State of Art, it was this article about the $700,000 a month revenue. And the article read really well. It broke it down. I think they were pulling from one of the dashboards. I'm not sure whose dashboard. I just didn't click on the article. But it kind of broke it all down. And yeah, it's definitely impressive. It was a great title, great clicks. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but again, it's like, really? There's that much money made? And again, maybe there is. It's just, lack of seeing any of that in my gameplay style. So again, I just maybe aren't connected and see what people are doing. And, maybe that is truly all the Atlas that was earned from the infrastructure contracts and other things like that. So anyways, I guess just didn't have enough time, it was interesting, but it didn't relate to what I'm doing. Or how I'm playing. So I was like, but yeah, it was just still kind of an interesting thing. And again, it was great to get those kind of articles written, things like that. So anyway, so that kind of wraps up the kind of state of Star Atlas. So I'll move to my final segment, which is kind of my journey. If you've been following along, again, my goal was in Sage to get enough resources mined and transported back so I could craft to redeem one of the Mamba X's. Then in the process, the team changed the crafting recipe, so now it costs a lot more. So be it. I had taken all my ships finally out of Faction Fleet Score and moved them in there, which gave me a lot better mining capacity, but also meant I was going through resources quicker, food and ammo, and definitely fuel moving things about. So been trying to do some research, got kind of started but not definitive on whether or not to just sell the resources at the starbase using the local markets and not have to worry about transport. So I'm still trying to figure out, the cost of fuel versus the perceived thought that the resources will be worth less at the starbase than they were at the Central Space Station. But in the process of doing that, I was kind of realizing that mining, you really use a lot of ammo and food. And so I was again realizing that there are specialized ships, in this case, mining ships. And Armstrong, Tip, Tap, I can't remember the names. But again, they're dedicated to mining, and their benefit is they don't require any ammo. They do still require fuel. So I guess I kind of went off on a tangent. I kind of like the idea of having a specialized ship to do a specialized thing, and I've been leaning toward, subject to proving it, but at least leaning toward that. If I'm going to craft this, I got to do something. And so mining seemed like a good thing to do for my fleet, but maybe not transport, partly because lots of fuel is involved, moving that back and forth. So on a whim, I decided to go ahead and buy a mining ship. So I bought the small class Armstrong. I think it's Imp. I should have looked that up. But anyway, so I did one. So I haven't bought a ship in years, and I don't know, it just felt good to get a ship. And I think I might have got a really good deal because there was one that was $50 USDC cheaper than the other one that was there. So, and definitely overall, they're still cheaper than the origination price that's still, I don't know, maybe those sold out. But anyways, yeah, so I went ahead and set that up. And I guess part of it is I just felt like having something, again, if my whole goal or my whole reasoning is, well, I should be mining, that to have something that's constantly mining. And the cool thing, since it only uses a little fuel, not zero, but a little, and food, well, then I could just buy that at this local, Starbase. And so the idea that I always would have to send a fleet out there to keep restocking the food, well, might not be true. And so partly, again, this was really an impulse buy. It really wasn't a strategy that I'd worked out, but it just felt good. Plus I have a repair ship. And so I kind of like the idea, and I got claim stake. So I kind of like to have the idea of the fundamental kind of things that are more economic based than fighters or combat. So, but my kind of random idea was, well, I could always send it out ahead of the big fleet, and maybe the big fleet's moving stuff, but this guy is at least moving ahead and mining the next resource kind of independently and then kind of moving on. But again, using the local markets to buy the resources to keep it going. So anyway, so again, it was a spontaneous purchase, doesn't really thought out, but it kind of felt good. And I don't know, just felt like finally, getting something and having something new. Now, the only downside is it did double my Solana fees because I do have them in two different fleets. But again, that was because at some point I know my big fleet there. So what I did is I basically took the big fleet, moved a whole bunch of ammo and food, and then got it mining carbon again. That's the resource I'm focusing on because it was the most. And yeah, immediately when that guy got going again, getting very close to the goal. In fact, I had to turn off my laptop so you guys can't hear it on the microphone, but it was definitely getting closer. And I think at this point, I'm going to, when I run out of ammo, I think I was starting to run out, that's enough. And I'll just buy the rest of the carbon at the Central Space Station. I mean, if you got 70 million carbon, you got to buy 1 million, so be it. So anyway, so that was, I don't know. Again, it just felt cool. And again, nothing wrong with having a mining ship that's dedicated to mining. Transport, on the other hand, I don't see any benefit of getting a true transport ship because you still have to use fuel. So it doesn't really, it might be bigger, but it doesn't seem to change anything. And I'm still not really up on the whole scanning thing. So the scanners, again, that ship might make sense, but again, just not something. And again, at this point, I have to admit the real compelling or the real roadblock to everything is Solana fees. I mean, 2 fleets, doubled your fees and without really a great benefit. And so I know I'm going to probably be eating in Solana fees, but I don't know. I guess I just felt like 2 fleets just seemed cooler and could do other things for me. So anyway, so that's kind of where I'm at that point. So still working on that spreadsheet to kind of compare local markets versus transport. But yeah, it's always something I'm doing in Star Atlas, and that one seems to fall by the wayside again, just like my merch store, just like whatever other project. So anyway, so that's just a quick update on my journey. And to wrap it up, again, thanks for listening. Definitely open to any podcast guests. In fact, I have an idea for the future, though I know I've always said I have many ideas for guests and then I never have any on. But yeah, definitely open to that. And then just wanted to mention again my 2 Star House projects. One's my merch store, Intergalactic Gear, intergalacticgear.com, open for business, got some mugs, got some wall art. Please fill out the merch survey. And my community idea for gamers who don't want to join Star Atlas guilds, please go to intergalacticcoalition.com, interest survey there. Again, the idea is a community of people that aren't a member of guilds that can still hang out, but not be kind of real-time chat and more of threaded discussions and email alerts when there's updates to the things you want to talk about. So check that out at intergalacticcoalition.com. Other than that, thanks very much for listening. Hope you found this useful. Again, this is Matt with Intergalactic Herald. Have a great week ahead.